And this is a great segue into our second key finding, which is around new business from cloud-based products is coming from banks. So typically financial institutions, like we mentioned before, have been pretty slow to embrace cloud technology in the past, but these attitudes towards cloud technology, especially with the pandemic, appear to be changing now. So what we have found is that 43% of participants in our survey reported that their clients were comfortable with cloud-based products, while another 43% said that their clients were more comfortable with cloud technology than they were in the past. And then additionally, like we mentioned before with the pandemic, these current threats have an influence on the adoption of cloud-based products. And it would appear that, of our survey, 92% said that the pandemic has positively impacted the adoption of cloud-based products, which you guys mentioned, previously in the last couple of questions. But just around, cloud adoption trends, like I'll hand this off to you, Nirvana. Why do you think financial institutions were generally slow to embrace cloud technology in the past, prior to obviously the pandemic?
Sure. Well, I'm going to show my age here, but I've been around quite a while. So I remember when, you mentioned cloud and everybody jumped out the window and said, "Oh, get it away from me." And the reason for that was that from a regulatory perspective, it wasn't embraced at the time when it was still up and coming. But what has actually happened, given the way the market has matured and changed and the way the technology has advanced throughout the years and the vast, speedy transformation that we've been seeing with the new entrants into the financial services market, specifically like the fintechs that I mentioned and the big techs, etc., there's more competition. And there's also more data. There's a lot more data that needs to be kept, not just from an organizational point of view, but also from a regulatory point of view. Regulators had more requirements, more data requirements, more reporting requirements, and they needed to be able to take in that data, digest that data, and be able to do something with it and have the capability to kind of have that in place. And something like cloud adoption was a much more cost-effective way to do that. So as the regulatory viewpoint started to evolve and change, then businesses have been a bit more forthcoming, well, more so now than had been before, in terms of adopting cloud for their technologies. It gives them more of an edge. And obviously with the pandemic right now as well, it is, it is what we need to use. It's a necessity in a way. So that's kind of my view on that briefly.
Yeah, and this kind of leads into our next question. Just again, like, why do you think these attitudes towards cloud technology within financial services specifically appear to be changing? I know we mentioned the pandemic, but is there anything specific with the pandemic that has caused, these attitudes to change?
Well, I think what we are kind of seeing is, it became a necessity. So the attitude had to change anyway, because when you're stuck at home inside your house, how are you going to communicate? So cloud adoption became a necessity. And I think that was one of the key factors in terms of how the industry realized that that's what they need to rely on. So that's, I think, one of the key changes.
Yep. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I think one other factor, and I alluded to this before, in terms of, is it just a pandemic, or is it also a maturing of cloud technologies adoption? And those who have pioneered, gone first, others can now benefit from. I see firms adopting cloud either for that. Or also sort of FOMO, or everyone else seems to be doing it, so I should do it. But and I wonder if that could potentially cause a bit of a backlash later when because cloud isn't perfect. It's obviously got clear massive benefits over previous technologies, but equally it's not without risk, and maybe that's something else. Something that we all need to sort of be aware of and mitigate against. But certainly the trend is positive.
Yeah, I think also I agree with Sarah and what Nirvana was saying. I think from what we are saying is that we call it Amazon effect, where people got used to the click of the button to the services, and with the timing, actually the services delivered much better. So those type of services almost impossible to be delivered from on-prem solutions, taking into account the speed, the quantum of data needs to be crunched, the innovation that is required. So just think about the growing evidence that the cloud is a fundamental factor to the fintech firms to innovate. That's why we've seen the growth of all these unicorns coming out of the financial services, the likes of Revolut and others, where they're just crunching and deploying natural language processing sort of techniques, machine learning. They're adding new products every week, every month. You can't cope with that unless you start actually innovating, and it has to be in the cloud. Another thing is, I think one of the points is that before, the compliance and privacy and data was considered to be, no, we can't go off-prem just because cybersecurity is adamant and the privacy is critical. It's been already long proven that the cybersecurity issue in the cloud is actually probably much better than sitting on on-prem, because you probably less potential impact from the even insider threats that can happen. Another thing is reduced capex. The fact that you have amount of data that was generating in the last 2 years is now 90% of all the data available. It means that the data is exploding. So storing the data and crunching the data becomes expensive if you want to keep it all on-prem. So you have to go either private cloud or public cloud or hybrid model, but it is the only cost-effective solution. And of course, the financial services, they are thinking about the costing. So I think all of that, with the fact that there are a lot of software and technology solutions now being built cloud native, it means that if you want to be in line with the progress, you basically have to adopt it. And this is on the agenda of majority of the financial service firm.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this leads into our last question. How has the pandemic positively impacted the adoption of cloud-based products and influenced RegTech? Robert, you want to take this one?
Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, I echo what everyone said. I think it's almost sort of, it's wrapped up in the same aspect where people have, it's a sort of consumerization of IT in a way almost. And the clickability, as Vasile said, and as Jay said, I talked to a lot of IT providers, managed service providers, and the common refrain was they couldn't sell Teams before lockdown at all because it was number 100 in the list. And then as soon as lockdown came, all they were doing was Teams. And so I think that has really been a big impact. People working from home, not just the consumerization of IT, but almost the consumerization of work, and needing to maintain that level of professionalism. And then echoing Sarah's point, I think the increase in demand for cloud has made vendors up their game as well. So vendors are presenting a lot more mature face so that the financial services who are naturally risk averse can actually, in terms of taking on these technologies, can have more confidence in doing so.